Continuing our series highlighting working progressive women running for Congress, trying to transform the priorities of Congress, the stories reflected in Congress. Of course, that is the work of Matriarch, our mission as an organization. We are highlighting somebody that is probably very familiar to many of you. Her name is Cori Bush. She is running for Missouri's 1st District against a 20-year incumbent, Lacy Clay. And she ran last time around, scared the crap out of him, but she was not scared off. And she decided, you know what? I'm coming back for more. And she's been building a movement amidst possibly the craziest of elections in many lifetimes, with COVID happening at once, with uprisings happening. Cori, thank you for running. Thank you for joining us. I know it's been a very busy week for you. You were just endorsed by Bernie Sanders, who you're surrogate for. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be on your show. I'm so glad that you've given women like me this platform to be able to, get our message out for visibility, and because we don't get the same type of media that other candidates get. And so this is such a way to help break down those barriers.
I appreciate that, Cori. We gotta stick together, and when they say solidarity, it's not solidarity exclusive to your priorities. It's real solidarity. Cori, you've been running really since I've known you nonstop. You ran the second time around in the midst of a presidential election. You ran around the country campaigning for Bernie Sanders. You've put so much on the line for your community, knowing very well that you're running against a family, literally a family, a man who's been there for 20 years. His father was there before. They're an institution.
Yes.
And, most folks would say, listen, can't challenge that. You can't challenge the institutional power. Why is it that you originally decided to run and continue to run despite all of the obstacles that they presented and pushed on you along the way?
Yeah. So being someone that has gone through so much that I feel could have been different for me. Like, I feel like my life could be different had change happened in our communities. If we had somebody that was pushing for the things that are affecting regular folks, and especially marginalized communities, and what's happening in my urban community. And so just continuing to go through situation after situation, knowing that there is another life. Like, we hear about it, how do I get there? And then we have people who even look like us that are allowing us to continue in these situations, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. I think back to when I was first asked to run for office. So coming out of the Ferguson uprising, being a part of that whole movement, leading protests, or doing a lot of organizing there. And then I started traveling around the country as part of the Truth Telling Project, which I am a co-director and co-founder of, just traveling around the country, making sure that the right word was going out about Ferguson, because the narrative was terrible. We're not terrorists. We are change makers, and we were just regular folks that wanted to see our community better. But out of that, I decided, someone asked me to run. May he rest in peace. He's an activist who was murdered. He asked me to run for Senate, for U.S. Senate. Immediately I said no. My dad had been in politics for most of my life. I saw him go through so much hurt, even though he was giving his soul to the community. But when I thought about it, every single time we were on that ground, I'm watching people beaten and brutalized, hung upside down, hogtied, hanging off of a baton, simply because they were using their voices. People beaten just because they stepped off of a curb, and just so many things happen. People missing, people dead, people all kinds of things, horrible things. Dogs in our community against us. I'm looking at all of this and thinking about how those elected officials that are paid to represent us, how they weren't standing up for us. They weren't out there. So many of them weren't. I can count on my hand how many were. And the person that's in this seat where I'm running, I only out of 400 and something days that we were out there protesting, I don't remember seeing him but once. And so,
wow.
And so the idea that you can't challenge, this person because he's a machine, because there is this legacy, this loyalty, behind this nostalgia that people have behind this person. We can't be so focused on a person that our communities suffer. Look at what has happened with Senator Sanders. I support Senator Sanders wholeheartedly, and everyone knows that. But he never made this about him. He never made this about himself. He said, not me, us. And in the same way, that same movement is in me, it's in so many others. And that's what it's about. And so I don't want anybody, we shouldn't be following after this one person because that family has held this seat for all of this time. St. Louis is number one, number two for homicides, violent crime, and so many other issues. That's not okay.
I mean, when you say it from that perspective, what is the power that they've had over other people from challenging them? I mean, yes, they control the machinery of politics, but when you have physical uprisings happening all around you, and the numbers are in number one, number two for homicides, for crime, whatever it is that they put out there, there's a point where, as we're seeing nationally, where like that just doesn't work anymore. And why did it take so long for people to really see and contextualize what's happening in St. Louis, and that the buck stops at the leadership?
Yeah, people had, there have been people challenging, but for people to support that challenge was hard. Because I'll say this, with the congressman's father moving into that seat in 1969, that was a huge deal, for a Black man to win that seat in 1969, so we understand. And then people will talk about how great of a leader, civil rights activist he was. So I can understand that. But he is no longer in that seat. And so it took, I think, even now, even when I ran in 2018, there were a lot of people who felt like, why would you challenge? But this time around, when we started knocking doors for this race back before COVID and, making phone calls since COVID, people are no longer saying that. We're no longer hearing, why would you challenge? We're hearing, oh, it's time. It's time for something different. Because the thing is, even in the midst of COVID-19 and me being sick, this team still kept moving. I was doing what I could, after my first race, when I was brutally, I was violently sexually assaulted. I was raped right after that. I took some time off to collect myself, but then I got right back out there. Not saying everybody has to, or everybody should, or we should look down on people who can't. That was my road. And so I'm just that person. So I'm that person that will go to Congress, and no matter what is going on, I'm not caring about whether I'm popular to anybody. I care about, did my district get what they needed? Did our nation move towards, or where is that arc bending toward? Is it bending toward justice right now? Am I helping with that? That's what this is about. And so people are seeing it now, and they're saying, enough is enough. We're ready.
Can you talk a little bit about some of what you've experienced over the last few years, personally, financially? I mean, one of the things that I think all of the matriarch candidates are dealing with is, I don't think the public really gets it, that when you run for office, you're most likely not working because it's a full-time job. If you are, that's very hard. You've got bills to pay. And unless you're independently wealthy, there's a reason why all these millionaires and billionaires are in office, because they can afford to, and they're protecting everyone. So, I don't know how much you're willing to share, but what could you express that you've personally experienced while running, before running, you've put on the line, and that you can take with you into Congress as a message to most people so they understand what it means, what sacrifice it took for you to run?
Sure. So I'll start with the place where I was financially before I ever said yes to running for office. So that plays a role. So it's not like I said, like, this is a goal of mine, so I'm going to set my life up to be able to do this later, that it just came from out of nowhere to run. So I was already a single parent, not really receiving any child support. I'm just, trying to make ends meet on my own, had college debt, and, so just trying to survive, already. And then, credit issues, because I got into the payday loan, cycle, just trying to survive. And so when I decided to run for this seat, we had been protesting for over a year. So I spent a lot of time, any extra time I had, not extra time, any time I had, I was in Ferguson on the street or somewhere in St. Louis or somewhere protesting. And so there wasn't like extra money. It wasn't like I was working a second job, getting more money. Yeah. So when I decided to run, when I said yes to run for the seat, gosh, I was still working full time. I was the nursing manager of a clinic, or the director, one of the two, of a mental health clinic, and I had to work. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have the money to run. I didn't have the option to be able to take off and allow my campaign to pay for my pay me a salary. I could not, because we weren't raising the money, of course, but I had to pay. I'm the total breadwinner in my household. My children were smaller. So I remember that there were days where, hoping I could put a bill off.
Yeah.
I'm calling around. Can I pay you next month? Can I pay you in a few weeks? Borrowing money, coming home and my electricity is turned off. There were days when I had to figure out, how am I going to pay the rent this month? I would take money, my personal money, and I'm trying to do things for the campaign, even though I didn't have the money. It was really difficult. And I'll say this, my very first race, the day of the primary election, after I found out I lost, and after the watch party, someone drove me home. And I remember I pulled up at my house and I'm looking like, where's my car? My car was gone. My car had been repossessed, and then the second time around when I ran, I was a little bit better because I had been through it. So I knew where mistakes could be made. So I tried to do a lot better. Yeah. The issue is I was still coming off of that. And I was coming off of not working for 4 months because I had come through that sexual assault. So I didn't work. So I started off in a bad position financially again. But then I had days where it was like, you're so busy on the campaign. I paid my electric bill twice and didn't pay my gas bill, came home to no gas, on in my home. So we had no heat, that type of thing. People don't understand, while you're trying to campaign, people expect you to look a certain way. Mm-hmm. You have to be on this and that, you always have to be camera ready. I would get, Nomiki, I would have people say to me, how dare you come to this event in your scrubs? You look so...
You're a nurse. You're an actual nurse.
I just left a 12-hour shift or a 10-hour shift. I came straight here trying to get here, and you're saying that I shouldn't have come in my nursing uniform. And so it's that type of thing. So I was going to the thrift store to purchase blazers and slacks to be able to... Yeah. And blouses to be able to campaign.
And imagine, if a doctor was running, they would, yeah, exactly. In scrubs. It's just context, right? Uh-huh. Cori, this is so important for people to understand. And I don't think everyone gets it. I don't think progressive lawmakers get it, that every step of the way when you're running, you are sacrificing something. And then as you get closer, as you are right now, you start getting the hits from the establishment. And so this is why, I personally feel, and this is, something we're going to reiterate over and over, why progressive lawmakers need to endorse early, why organizations need to endorse early, because candidates need, number one, some protection, some backup, right? People out there defending them, because a candidate can't defend every attack coming at them, and also helping them raise money. When somebody like a Bernie Sanders endorses you, money comes in, but if it's in the last month, and I'm obviously it's wonderful that he endorsed you, imagine having that money early so you can build the infrastructure, have the team, because you're at the same time competing with a machine that is full of money from who knows where, and they're using it to build their brand, get their message out, and attack you.
Exactly. And they're doing this with more name recognition straight out the gate, right. And also the, with some of these organizations, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because, when a year ago we turned in, our information, our questionnaires for endorsement, and have started talks with different groups for endorsement, to even now still be waiting, and I understand that there's this process, and I understand, that things may, that there may be issues, and there are candidates that should be endorsed before us, but we have to get to a point to where we see that, hey, well then on the front end, let's do something different, because just because my campaign is later, it doesn't mean that I don't need the help earlier. I still need the help, because then we get to the end like this, and then we have a lot of groups saying, hey, we want to endorse, but we're about to head into our GOTV. We could have used that help earlier, because the other thing is, how are you marketing yourself? Do we have money to do marketing? Do I know how to brand myself? Like things like that would have helped, so much earlier, especially when you're fighting name recognition. Even though we aren't fighting it as much, I'm still fighting the Cori the protester name recognition thing, which was the whole situation, now, but with Knock Down the House, with the film that I'm in, it kind of helped break that down. So people see me a little more, it humanized me, but we need people to look at us and see that, hey, this is the group that doesn't have the access. So, and that's why we're doing it, is because they don't have the access, but, we just got to do this thing differently.
Cori, there's a global uprising happening, national uprising happening, and it seems to be moving the needle on who's more sensitive to the extraordinary abuses by the police and racism and murders, but also just like the systemic issues that Black people have faced for generations in this country since arriving to the Americas, and then also what it means to protest. And so I'm very curious how, based on what you just said, a few years ago, people saw you as a protester, but now is this conversation, is it okay to be a protester running in your district? Are people now warming up to the fact that, oh wait, this is how we have made change in this country over and over and over again? It's been voices like you standing up to the status quo, standing up to the establishment, standing up to big money. Are you feeling that? Like as you're campaigning in COVID, but are you feeling that?
Yes, I'm feeling that because, before we had so many people that were like, it was the get out of the street, and, get a job, that whole thing. And, or people that just weren't saying anything. Right. And then when Donald Trump, when he won, then it turned into, there was this whole other group that came out and it's like, oh, we're sorry. We realized that we made a mistake during Ferguson. We weren't there for you because we didn't understand, because we weren't as directly affected. Now we're more affected. So now we see, and, we want to help. But still there was no no real movement, no real mobilization, behind our efforts. But now, that's completely different. Everybody and their cousin's cousin, is out protesting, wanting to show that they're protesting. Protesting isn't a curse word anymore. It's not like, you are the rebels and the people that are going to, burn everything down. Now it's like, you are the change makers. Now people are seeing it like that way. You are the change makers and I have to be a part of this change. People are feeling it. People are feeling that something is happening. And yeah, it took these stairs. It took something being built to get here. But just like my auntie that I love, I like to call her my auntie, Dr. Angela Davis. She was I just saw an interview with her and she was talking about how she feels that this is the time, just watching this global uprising, behind, just completely overhauling our policing system and, and really having justice for Black people in this country. Just seeing that means so much, because that means that there are people, because she saw a different thing in her day, a much different thing in her day, but she pushed, yes, and she pushed past that thing, but the other thing is she is of a different generation, and so now we have people that are like, so there's this generational, those silos that were there before during 2014, during Ferguson, broken. You know, the different religions that believed a certain thing, didn't believe a certain thing, broken. You know, whether regardless of if you're, you know, LGBT or you're whatever, and all of that is being broken. It has just been torn down now. You know, everybody is feeling like they should stand up for justice. Or, and I'll say this, I believe that the group that is silent is really, really small. So you're either for, you know, progress, change, and doing anti-racism work, or you are not, and you are doing oftentimes the other work.
Yeah, and it happens on the Democratic side. I mean, we talk about these institutions, and you mentioned this, that you're running against a family, an establishment family, that under their leadership, things have only gotten significantly worse. And we have to have a reckoning in the Democratic Party that our leadership is not just, you know, I hear this rhetoric coming from folks like, well, Joe Biden's you know, he works with Republicans. Right now, from my perspective, what that signifies is, oh, you're working with the people who are on the side of the white supremacists, that are justifying in any single way that they want. And George Bush can get up there and he can talk about how he, you know, stands with BLM and he's voting for Joe Biden. That doesn't seem hard to vote for Joe Biden. How about all these Iraqi children that you bombed? Like, who were you in your worst moments? Who were you when you sat down and you negotiated with Republicans? It's one thing to co-sign on a bill, but it's another thing to say, I will work with them and I will take their votes. And so I think what you made it so clear, so clear. That silence, that neoliberal branding exercise is a wink and a nod to the worst members of the Republican Party that are guiding the Republican Party and beholden. They're holding, you know, they're guiding Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is guiding all of the moderate Republicans. So go ahead.
Silence is violence against my person. It's violence against my skin, you know? And so we can't have people, whether they are Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Libertarian, whoever you are, we can't have them being silent right now in this. But anybody who is of now, you know, anybody who is of influence, anybody who is of power right now in this moment should be very careful as to how they step into this moment or step out of this moment. Because number one, we're watching and history is recording you. That's number one. Number two, what you did yesterday is recorded, and we see what you did yesterday. We are not ignorant. We can see it and we know. So unless you are going to fix that, make up for, tell us, you know, explain that work and tell us how you're going to use your mistakes from that to change and then do something different now, then we don't need to hear. Then stand where you were standing. You know, don't jump. We don't need people jumping in because now Black Lives Matter and saying your Black Lives for Black Lives Matter is the thing. Look, we lost lives. We have there are people I protested with that lost their lives fighting for this. I could have lost my life on that ground out there. You know, I remember seeing the stars come into my face and then the ground come into my face, you know, and then getting stomped by, you know, several police officers with these steel-toe boots. I could have lost my life. My daughter, the bullet went through back of my car, through my back seat, and it disappeared somewhere between the back seat and the front passenger seat. Had it gone through, it would have hit her in the back of her spine. We could have lost our lives while people are out here playing, trying to be a part of what's popular now. No, be a part. Black lives were still Black lives back in 2014, back in 1865, back in 1619, back in 1565. We were still somebody then. So you should have stood up for that. People should have been standing up for us through all of this time. So don't jump on the bandwagon now saying that I want to do something when your yesterday shows us the opposite, unless you will make account for it. Anybody can evolve. So if you want to make account for it, because if you tore up Iraqi children and broke those people, fix that. Because those are still kids. Those are still families. Fix that. If Joe Biden and what he did with this crime bill, I lost so many friends to that. I lost so many friends, and I'll never forget it. Never forget it. Some who are still in prison today. Unless he can make a true account for it, then save the BLM. We need to know, because I need you to be my president. I need to know that you will represent me because I'm here because you didn't. I'm in this place right now. My friends that I can name them right now are in prison right now because you didn't. So with the same vigor and the same tenacity that you had to push that forward that first time around, have that same vigor and tenacity to fix it and make sure Black folks are free in this country.
Cori, we need you as president. Your race is, what day is your race, your election?
August 4th.
August 4th. You had a violent incident yesterday. I just want to wrap up with this because I don't know what else to say. I think you just spoke for so many people so powerfully, and it's why we believe in you and we love you and we need to get you elected because we need your voice in Congress, because that voice is going to echo and they're going to feel it to their bones. That's the problem. They don't want they don't want your voice in their face, calling out their legacies, their histories, being like they never want to see what they've created, what the problems they've created head on. It's why Nancy Pelosi pulls open her ice box and pulls that ice cream rather than, even going to hospitals to understand Black and brown communities being faced with COVID more, which she's been able to perpetuate. So you tweeted something out yesterday that you found bullet holes in your car, and you just mentioned another situation, because it's not the first time this has happened. Can you talk a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Sure. Yeah, I just don't know what happened. I heard the gunshots, and it was just really aggressive. The gunshots were really aggressive, and I didn't realize that the car was hit until I tried to drive off in it, and the car wouldn't move. And I didn't even notice that the on the other side of the car that the door handle had been hit. I just, I live in the community that is my community. I live where the people are that have the need, even though there are needs everywhere. I'm with my folks, and so whatever they're going through, I'm going through too, change has to happen from within. And so I'm within, and I'm not going to run. I'm still going to stay out there. Just like when all of those things happen, my car has been shot up. I've had different cars shot at, over the last several years, just being an activist. I didn't back down then, and I'm not going to back out now. I'm going to change it.
Cori, let's get you elected.
Yes.
Let's get you elected. There's a few more months. People can go to your website, which we'll have up here, to sign up to volunteer, give money, of course. They need the dough. That's how we're going to take you over the finish line. We're going to send shockwaves to Congress, and then your voice is going to melt those white supremacist statues sitting in Congress, and then we're going to form one. I love you, Cori.
I love you too, Nomiki.
You're so dear to my heart.
Oh.
Let's get you elected. You are listening and watching The Nomiki Show. Make sure to click subscribe and like and share to get those alerts on YouTube. And if you are not already, please join us on Patreon. It's our patrons who make this show happen. We are an independent media channel. What that means is that we don't have corporate stakeholders pushing us through the algorithms. We're not getting the likes and shares through bots. You guys are what makes the show function. So please, we invite you to join us on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show.